So, grappling hook arrows, do they work? And if so, how well? Some of you might remember that I did a short a while back where I took a regular grappling hook, which weighs about a kilogram, and I attached it to the end of an arrow, shot it from my 120-pound war bow, and it kind of did the job. I could get it to hook in a tree, and I could kind of hang from the rope. But the range on it was terrible, and it was heavy and impractical, and also it was literally just stuck on with tape. But since then, I've put out a call to some blacksmiths, and you've come up trumps. This is by Jim at Chokecherry Forge, and he's made me this. It's a grappling hook arrowhead, specifically. So it's got a socket for the arrow, a nice long section of hook, because through a bit of trial and error, I figured out that if you just have a short section, the whole thing will just roll off a branch. So it's got a longer section to kind of keep it on. The rope will attach here, and then this is for obviously for the shooting, but is largely not functional for the grappling hook itself. So it doesn't matter whether the wood can take my weight once it's already hooked. A few facts about it before I get started. It weighs in total with the arrow about 480 grams. So a regular arrow shot from this bow is about 85 grams. So this is about 6 times the weight of a normal arrow, but it's still half as much as the previous one that I tested. So hopefully it will give it a bit more leeway and let it cope a bit better with rope. I don't know how this is going to go. I haven't shot it before, so we're going to test it live, if you will. First off, I'm going to try shooting the arrow itself, just as is, see if I can hit something with it, and then see if it can kind of do the length of the garden here. I'm not too bothered about long range on it because I've only got a short bit of rope. But then I'm going to see how adding the rope affects the range. Obviously, it's going to decrease it quite a lot because this weighs 400 odd grams. This is probably slightly more than that, so I'm not going to get the full length of the rope launched out of the way. So yeah, the cool thing about this setup is that it's pretty much exclusively made from medieval age technologies. So this is just, steel and a regular bow. And the rope's made of hemp. So there's nothing about this that would be not viable in a historical setting. I am nervous though. I'm genuinely really nervous about how this is going to work. Test 1, shoot the thing. Problem. Okay, so I didn't see this coming. And looking at this, you'd be like, well, duh, the arrowhead weighs 5 or 6 times as much as a full-on arrow normally. But the reason I didn't was because I have done this trope before. And last time I did it, I used an arrow just like this, same thickness, same strength, and I had an arrowhead, if you will, that was twice as heavy. And that didn't break. So I was reasonably convinced that this time I would be fine. Evidently not. So, not to definition of madness about this, but I want to see if it was just a structural flaw in the arrow itself, or whether the whole concept is unviable, which means I need to go back to the drawing board, I need to grab another one of these arrow shafts, and I need to go again. Okay, take 2. This one actually does already feel a little bit more secure. I'm hoping that's not just my sheer optimism talking, and that there's actually something better going on here. But let's find out. Arrow, bow, draw, shot. That's more like it. Okay, let's keep going. Oh. Okay, cool. We can hit a target. That is a great start. That thunk, I felt that in my soul. This is it's slow. It's not like being hit with an arrow. It probably wouldn't kill you on impact, but you'll be very sad that you'd been hit. Test 2, can I get some range on it? I've changed the angle of the camera slightly because every time I do this, every time I knock it, I'm angling it down because it's very hard to just hold it out here while I knock the arrow. So I put the arrow down, knock it like this, and then pick it up as I draw. That's some range, right? That goes the length of the garden. It hit a tree on the way, but that's good. I'm happy with that because that means that I can grapple something as far away as the length of this rope. More so, in fact. Now let's see what the rope does to it. I've actually lost a bit of the end of the arrow. The very slight bit of the tip where it sits into the socket is breaking off when I land. Largely, I think, due to the fact that this thing is just so long, there's a lot of leverage on it. But to be honest, I'd rather that than the alternative. So I'm just going to shave this down a bit and then we'll go again. Okay, time to add a rope. Now the issue that I've had with this rope is that it is a bit too thick with a capital double C. It doesn't quite fit through the loop on the arrow, but I want it to be this thick because I want to be able to do this with a rope that I could conceivably climb afterwards. And something that's very thin and nylon, like this, is very, very difficult to climb, whereas this should give me plenty of grip and hopefully let me do some cool stuff. But what that means is I've got to start by attaching the thin rope and then have the thicker one trail after it. I don't think this is a great plan in terms of the physics of the arrow, but for now, it's all I've got. I also want to keep this huge lump of rope out of the way. You see how I'm avoiding saying not because of Tumblr? So I need enough length on the other rope so that this kind of sits behind the arrow here. I have no idea how this is going to affect it. Obviously, it's going to reduce the range significantly, but yeah, beyond that, I don't really know. So, let's go. Oh, it's been a while since I went climbing. I only ever remember the figure of 8 knots. I normally do bouldering these days, it's less important. But bouldering's for wusses, yes, and I am a wuss. Quite cheerfully trust my life to my limbs, but not to my equipment, he says, building a piece of equipment that he's going to trust his life to. Okay, here we go. Obviously, I'm going to cut this tail down, and I'm actually going to put a little, like I've done in the past, put a little slider on that will take that down there so that when I shoot, I can start with the rope out of the way of the shot, and then it will come to like pull on the back of the arrow rather than the front, which should reduce the amount of plummeting that it causes. So, time skip. This is very clearly the same spot. Yeah, that was a smooth transition. Right, here we go. One arrow. Got this arrow slider, which should hopefully help with the shooting. Sound effects are compulsory. Oh, this can only end brilliantly. Look, I don't need this to go a really, really long way. That's absolutely fine for it to be a relatively short-range thing because it's a dumb trope that I just want to have fun with. But I would like it to go further than that little puny target over there. See, I don't know if shooting directly upwards would be better or worse because the rope's not going to drag along the ground. But then, I'm not going to shoot it directly upwards here. That's a stupid plan. But when I've got a tree... Okay, come on, arrow. You're letting me down here. You're meant to be a viable trope, damn it. Better? Better? I'm not scaling a wall like that, though, am I? Okay, obviously this is going to depend massively on your thickness of rope, but I seem to be hitting a limit with how far I can get this thing to go. Just somewhere around... Oh, come on. There. Which is a bit upsetting because I can literally throw the rope that far without too much bother. But that's the thing about bows. The fundamental truth is that they can only put as much force into something as you can. All of this comes from the same muscles as my throwing arm. The reason they're more dangerous and have better range than throwing stuff is because they're like levers. They can propel something very light in a way that is much faster than you can throw it because they can move faster than the limits of your muscle speed. But as you increase the weight of the thing that you're launching, that efficiency goes out of the window, and suddenly it will hit a point where eventually you are more effective throwing a heavy thing. Because, okay, but with all of that said and done, the question still remains, can I make it work? Well, I got a tree and a can-do attitude, so let's find out. Right, I know I've been accused of being optimistic before, but I want to start simple with this. I just want to hook it on the tree somewhere relatively low that I can see. That was close. It's just that this is not a branch. Good try, hook, but not quite. Okay, it's on a thing. It's not where I wanted it, but to test the principle, it's just, I mean, yeah, but it hooks. Okay, I mean that's hooked. If I needed to swing from that, if that was across a gorge, I could do it. So what if it is across a gap? Ah. Okay, it's hooked. Hey. I'm in a tree. A little bit hard on this tree because it's a very cluttered tree in terms of branches. I might take it somewhere else. Just an extra thing I should say about portability. Obviously, an arrow like this isn't going to fully fit in a quiver, but I can fit all of the rope and the arrowhead pretty comfortably in a backpack. Also, this on its own, if you don't have the arrow on it, reasonably good grappling hook in its own right. I think we've got it. I think we've got a hook. Do I trust it? I've got to. Oh. Yes! Yes! It works! It works! Oh. Oh. It works! Long story short, you can make a grappling arrow and you can swing on it, but it is bloody terrifying. See you on the next trope.